understand what the hedgehog has to do with the grade.
Okay, good. Sorry, that maybe didn't come across very clearly. So the hedgehog, remember, had the one characteristic strategy for defending itself.
Oh, that's what it was.
So getting into that ball and protecting it. And that's why he used the hedgehog as an example to say, hey, this is what all great organizations have had. They've had a characteristic strategy which they're about. And really the question we're asking is, why do we exist? As PE in Idaho, why do we exist?
Thank you.
And again, let's not have multiple things that we're about, because we get scattered and then we end up doing nothing well.
Okay, thank you.
So, thank you for clarifying that. Anyone else?
Madison.
Tyler.
Madison.
Go ahead.
I've been a long-time student of Dower and Pangrazi, and I've taught out of their manuals since the early editions up until maybe the 14th edition, and it's been interesting to watch his philosophy about what you're talking about evolve as he's continued to test and make progress, and how he's moved from presidential fitness testing into the PACER program, and coming into the whole idea of making sure that we're really appealing to the kids' affective domains when we're teaching PE. And I'm 100% on board with you about PE has to be fun, because of one of the early statistics that Pangrazi put out is that a child determines the amount of time they're going to spend in physical activity, or their interest in physical activity, for the rest of their life by the time they're 12 years old. And I think that's a huge point that we should focus on, and maybe in terms of testing and showing figures to our legislature, maybe we're going to have to design some tests that that address those affective domains, their attitudes, their feelings, their wants and desires, rather than just trying to show them that this percentage of children are born genetically gifted, and so this is how they're doing on fitness testing.
No, well said. I think there's a lot of great insights there, but I think the biggest point that I took away was, the idea of if we want to measure student attitudes or students' affects towards movement in general, us creating a survey in Idaho might be something that's warranted, and that might be attractive to stakeholders, perhaps. And that's really the hard part of what I'm sharing today. Is this is always the counter argument is, okay, what are the stakeholders going to say though? They're going to be willing to throw money at us with these kind of things you're proposing? I realize that, and I don't know what's sexier, fitness outcomes, kids who improve their muscular strength and endurance and cardiovascular endurance, or hey, I like activity. That's a lot sexier, no question.
As PE specialist, and maybe this is going to step on some toes a little bit to say this, but I'm not so worried about the kids that are already good athletes. I'm not so worried about the kids that are already going to make the sports teams because they're genetically gifted and because they're well coordinated, because those kids have so many venues for their physical activity. They're going to be involved in football, basketball, baseball, volleyball. They're going to get lots of exercise and activity. They're going to be involved in community rec programs, but our primary focus needs to be on those kids that are not genetically gifted athletes, that are not going to choose physical activity through any other means, and they're not going to have anything to associate movement with fun other than how they can exercise their thumbs in video and electronic games. Those are the kids we need to reach out to, and I think we need to hit our legislature with that idea also, is that the sedentary population are not the ones that are going to be involved in sports and athletics. That's what we need to save.
That's a great comment. Many people who are kinesthetically inclined are naturally, they can move on their own. I was one of those, and many of us probably in this room were. I didn't so much need a teacher always to help me get involved in movement. It was something I was naturally drawn to. But I think you're right. There are some that need the guidance of a worthy peer, or especially a teacher, to help provide opportunities for them to move, no question about it, and to provide the modifications to the movement to help them feel successful doing so.
Somebody to help them understand that it's fun. It's fun to exercise. It's fun to get out of their television room.
Yeah, if I can say this, I personally believe that you talk about the enjoyment thing. Perhaps one of the reasons that stakeholders cut physical education before other subjects is because they assume that kids are more likely to play basketball or to play tennis or to go hiking on their own outside of class than they are to write essays, do algebraic equations, or any of that kind of stuff, right? They'll be more likely to do that stuff on their own, so we don't need physical education as much. But your comment about technology today, the point is this: kids, they have options for play in relation to technology. And the likelihood of them opting for movement-related play is less now than ever before, no question about it. Which is why I believe our schools are important for providing opportunities for movement-related play. Because they're probably, many of them are not likely to do that on their own anymore. Which I think is good for us in physical education. Here's our opportunity to provide more opportunities for movement-related play.
Even 10 years ago, statistics were showing that kids were spending an average of 25 hours a week in sedentary play activities. That's the same amount of time they're required to spend in classroom learning activities in elementary school. So maybe that's the kind of facts we need to hit our legislature with.
Thank you. Enjoyed your comments.
I think Coeur d'Alene had some questions. Coeur d'Alene has their hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to mention, I was thinking about what you were talking about, and I just thought some of the challenges are finding that area each kid. I teach at elementary PE in Priest River, in a smaller town, which I think I probably got a lot less movement. And you're right about kids that play basketball. You know, they're going to be active on most everything. We do like dance and stuff that try to hit the other kids, and even some of the kids don't even like that. And it's just trying to find the challenge is finding what does fit each kid, because one activity may not be interest of one certain kid and maybe of another, and we mix that up in my program to try to hit everything. Joey's going to have one kid that and their parents that don't like one thing. I got one girl in particular who I feel that didn't like dance, so the parent comes in and opts out. They have no accountability. They can opt out and just leave, not come to PE, because the parent goes over my head and does that. And so you wonder, how does that hold accountability? Does any kid have to come to my PE class? That's a sixth grader I'm talking about, and that's generally where we have that area of loss of activity for all the kids I'm seeing is in about sixth grade. I get a lot of activity from fifth lower. But sixth grade, you give them, they're opting out and parents are backing them up. And so where's the accountability and there's the challenge, I think. But it's just a topic to bring up and to think about. So.
Yeah, thank you. I don't think there's any easy answers to that.
Yeah.
Coeur d'Alene again.
Yeah, my comment was kind of to piggyback off of Madison High School. When we're talking about kids who they're going to form their opinions about physical fitness by the age of 12, and yet we're talking about parapros that are in those elementary schools working with those children. Isn't it more important at that point in the game that we have professionals that are certified at that level to encourage those kids and at those younger age, so we help promote those attitudes later? Because I'm thinking those are the more important years. By the time they get to me in middle school and us in high school, they've been formed, and we can encourage and keep them moving. But it just seems those younger ages are almost where it's more important to have the professionals that are certified for those children.
Yeah, I would very much agree. I'd be interested to hear, those who teach elementary physical education methods, their perspectives on that. But I think you're right. And I just lost my train of thought of what I wanted to say. But if it comes back to me, I'll say it. At the moment, I don't remember. Oh, okay. The paraprofessionals that are teaching in these elementary schools, but I think all of us should know they're not PE paraprofessionals. They're just paraprofessionals. And
right.
So I think this is a good question, and I know some on our IFERD board have posed the question, what is a qualified physical educator? I think we should, that'd be a good question again for all of us to answer. What is a qualified physical education teacher? In my mind, I'm just throwing off a couple of things real quick, but it's someone who's deeply passionate about movement. If someone, and who moves regularly on their own. I personally believe that. Secondly is the person better be very good at adapting and modifying activity-related content to meet the needs of a wide variety of individuals. And if you want me to get specific, they better be very good at adapting equipment to meet the needs, adapting rules to games. Never should we use large-sided games in physical education, ever. That's just one example of a rule modification. Environment modifications and also instructional modifications. And I'm taking those from Lieberman and Houston Wilson, who are adapted physical education professionals in the state of New York. But I think those are applicable to what we do in physical education on a daily basis. we think about our programs. I mean, if I were to sit in Dr. Bell's elementary methods class, that kind of stuff, even though he's not going to use that exact terminology, that's exactly what he's teaching. And that's what that's a highly qualified PE teacher in my mind, someone who's very, very good at adapting equipment, rules, environment, and instruction to meet the needs of a variety of different learners. I think those 4 areas cover about all of it.
I think I'm going to become unpopular here, but what happens if you do have a PE paraprofessional that does have all of those qualifications? That's something hard for, like, I mean, ideally, everybody who has that certificate does have all of those qualifications. But, like, I'm thinking of our paraprofessional that we have, and he is a special forces retired person, and he gets these kids moving, and they love him. He has them training for a 10K, and they're all adapted for all the grades. And so, I guess
you're saying he's doing a fantastic job.
He's doing an absolutely amazing.
And he's not certified. And I think we need to.
He's the paraprofessional PE, and he does just do PE. And so I guess if you guys were to go for the movement, no paraprofessionals in the elementary school, I think it would be kind of scary because there are several people that fall in that gray area.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense?
You're bringing up a really good point. What's the value of teacher education programs, right? It's a good question to ask. Do we really need teacher preparation programs for people to teach physical education? That's really the deep-seated question I think you're posing. I personally believe we do, and I do know that there are people like the one you're describing who, because of their dispositions, their skills that they already possess anyways, they can effectively lead a group of kids in an activity setting and do a very nice job of it.
And they're athletic themselves, so they're a role model. You know,
right.
I can think of some people that, have that certificate, but they
sure.
necessarily aren't out there running with the kids like he is and stuff like that. And so I just get scared of, like, the black and white, I guess, because there are so many paraprofessionals that we do have to keep in mind that do fall in that gray area.
And that would be an area maybe we should explore in Idaho to take a look at how many of these paraprofessionals are trained. What is the quality of the job that they're doing currently? And I do think we need to have some standards, though, for having expectations for what is a qualified PE teacher in Idaho. And perhaps what we could do is provide some friendly nudges to this individual. Hey, we want you to stay on board with this. But we're doing this because we want to have some stability in Idaho for physical education professionals. So we want to encourage you and provide as much opportunity as we can for you to get certified. But it's a good point. Helen?
I'm in health, not PE, so I have questions that most of you probably know the answers to, but you do have PE standards, and if PE is required for K through 8, isn't it a requirement that whoever teaches it meets standards? I mean, because you do have standards, and so that's one question, and then my second question is kind of related to that. I appreciate what you're saying about appealing to kids' affective domain about PE. How do you see that fitting in with the standards that the state has adopted? I mean, you still do have standards about skills and
For
fitness.
sure.
So it's kind of two-part there. One is about the paraprofessional, would they need to meet standards? Wouldn't anybody providing PE in the state need to meet standards? And the second is based on sort of and I appreciate what you had to say, how that jives with standards.
Yeah. I will say this. I've heard from some of my colleagues before that, their experience being in schools, they don't see very many teachers meeting all of the standards anyways. I know the standards are there.
Right.
But I've read some studies in other states where, they've had standards too, and the percentage of PE teachers even knowing that such standards exist is very minimal. And I think maybe that's what we found through the study that you conducted recently with the survey. Maybe that wasn't one of the questions. I don't remember.
Well, actually, there was a question that asked about how many, as far as the different levels, elementary, junior high, and high school, different levels, as far as are they targeting those standards within their curriculum. And the first survey, elementary, junior high, was quite high. If it was 70 or 60, 80%, I can't remember, saying that they do target the standards, each one of them. And high school is a little lower in the first survey, but the second survey we sent out, elementary, junior high, and high school, those were quite high. Again,
That's good news.
It was 60 to 80%, depending on which level you're looking at and which standard, but all of them were being targeted.
So following the standards. Whether they meet them is
a different issue.
Yeah.
But they're saying in word that, yes,
But
we
those were
address that.
And they were PE teachers, though. They weren't.
Yes.
right.
Yep. And you were saying that the last question was what I'm proposing, that we don't forget, the affective domain, so to speak, in physical education, when we have standards that meet. I think it really goes back to the point I'm making about headshot. I believe in our national standards. I believe in our state standards. I really do. But again, I think if we're spread out with what we say we should be about, we lose track of the one main thing we should, focus on to help us be perhaps the best in the world at. I mean, there's some situational factors that we have in schools. I mean, there's 55 million kids in the United States that attend public and private schools every day, where they spend at least 40 hours a week. I mean, we have access to more kids for more time than any other group of professionals anywhere. What can we do to maximize that as far as providing movement-related opportunities for them? So I'm just worried. I love the standards, and I believe in them, but I do sometimes feel like we get so focused on trying to meet all of them that we end up being good at nothing.
Hey Tyler, can I speak for a second?
Yeah.
It's Trudy. One of the things that I feel is that we lack maybe admin support. Like I've seen the flip. I've seen bad para-educators. I've seen good para-educators, kind of what I think someone in your room was just talking about. But in 7 years of teaching, I have truly only had 3 true evaluations out of my 7 years of teaching. I'm a good teacher. They know I'm a good teacher, but so they feel like they don't have to come in, and then we get a new teacher in. Well, Trudy's going to take care of her. She's going to make sure she teaches to the standards. They have no clue that we do have standards, let alone how to enforce them and to make sure that we're teaching what we're supposed to be teaching. And I guess that to me is a major concern, because I have had those admin that have no clue what we are supposed to be doing in our classroom. They know in math, reading, and science for sure, but they don't know what we're supposed to be doing in PE. And how do they enforce those if they don't know what we're supposed to be doing?
It's a great question. I don't know if I have any response to that. I think it's sad that you've never been evaluated. Just so you know, in all my years of teaching PE at the junior high level and now at the university level, I've never been evaluated once, so at least you've had 3 times. Again, I think this goes back to us being advocates for our content to sell to our administrators the value of what we do. And, again, we try to sell the value of it through fitness, especially health-related outcomes. But I think we also need to stand up and defend our content for what it is in and of itself. So, I don't know, Trudy.
Okay, what we're going to do, because we've been sitting for a while and we're all physical educators, so we'll probably need to move. Well, if it's okay, what we're going to do is take a quick 5, 10, take a tenner. And one thing I wanted you to do is the whole point of our conversation here is to make sure that we have something at the end of this. I think that there's certain solutions that are kind of national and best practices. Obviously, states have shown some things. I think there's some natural barriers in there that we can do through policy, etc. So keep these things in the back of your mind. But one of the things that I want you to say or want to think about is, how does that then translate? Like, what are the physical or what are the policy barriers right now that are preventing us from having good quality PE in the state of Idaho? Does that make sense? I thrive on nonverbal, so. Okay, so take a 10, we'll be back at 10-2.
Yeah, I've been meaning to talk to you.
Big things over there.
I just like to do that. Now I'm going to go shopping. So have you called me? So that up right away. So that make sure that it's ready. So that'll be showing up to someone. So should I put it up right? I'll move for you. Well, how are you? And you guys are kind of tag team talking.
Yeah, we're just gonna.
And I'll just let you introduce yourself
Sure
and
am.
come back. We'll just start with you guys.
No problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you sit, can you,
Probably fit.
if you guys sit right here, they'll see you pretty well. Okay.
Nice job.
Thank you. Hey, but I was just saying to her, because she's the advocacy specialist, the kinds of things that I mentioned, we market that to stakeholders. That's the.
This is a whole. I mean, this is a whole conundrum. I mean, it's what's the best thing we can do, and we're going to come at it from a different angle a little bit. Here are all the pieces you should think about.
Right. Well, you were talking about presidential thesis tests. I remember taking those in elementary school. Like, I remember the day that I remember, like, I thought, this sucks. I'm not doing this anymore. So I was the kid in the back of the class giving the proverbial finger teacher.
No, I was too. Some kids really like them though. That's the thing.
But the problem is if we just say play, then use recess, you know? It's like exactly that, you know?
Yeah, and that's the part that's not attractive because we need a qualified personnel for that. And I know that's where we go. I personally, I'm working on an article right now that's addressing this very issue. Why we be play oriented, but still need a professional.
Well, and the fact of the matter is speaking of professionals. Oh yeah.
Professional.
Well, but we really that different from recreation.
Oh yeah.
I think we're different in some ways, but I think we tend to disregard it.
But the thing is, what is the ultimate?
Yeah, kids would be.
Like, if our goal is to all get so we're not all that different from why are we this one to be more like I mean, and vice versa. But you're saying
Yeah, it's been really good.
so why can't we make sure
But I love Grace's perspective. I like what you're saying. Like, we think we're overprotective of our profession. We want to make sure we have our jobs. But
It's like everybody. I mean, it's like, math and engineering. Throughout math.
But you're seeing firsthand. You've actually, I've heard, come to recently. Right?
Oh,
Isn't that what led to the fitness idea?
Well, not really to fitness idea. It's just in the interviews that we've been doing, they are getting steadily cut and cut. So it's like,
Yeah, so.
what are we going to do about that?
So he's been over years, and
What it
eventually,
is.
but it's nice.
I help.
I'm like, I'm glad I didn't get a job. I mean, I would have been doing it, and you would have been. So it just,
we get kids moving if they would be less obese.
That's the health part that you were talking about at the beginning. And we're going to talk about that, just as something that people should look at. But, our approach is that we need the whole picture. Because your picture is just as important. Our fitness and health skills is just important. Physical activity.
You're going to take care of her.
And it's like we have to build a profile where we can convince legislators to say, okay, all these pieces need to be in place. Because if you don't, then we're real problems.
Stop obesity for strikes. That's your indicator.
But let me tell you this.
Give me physical activity every day.
I can cite study after study.
Really?
Physical activity programs
Not in
It depends on who you
BMI.
read, but
Not in BMI.
well, fitness they can. They can too. Not all.
But you need the days. If you don't have the days, then it's a requirement. And that's my point. I'm just thinking, what are we going after? We're going after requirements?
Well, that's what this group needs to figure out.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that, and if you are, What I'm gonna ask them is when they break up, two things, two major questions. First, if your governor's birthday, you can do anything, what do you do? What are the policies that you put in place automatically by office? You are Governor Otters, or superintendent, whatever you want, you're gonna do it. What does that look like? And to me, that's already 5 years to 10 year goal, right? Okay, then take that, what's realistic? What can we do next year? What is our low-hanging fruit? And low-hanging fruit to us is still extremely hard, but is that minutes at elementary, because we already require it, or is it graduation requirement in high school because it's a softer sell and it's already required to be offered? I mean, or if that's, or if it's this regular certified teachers.
They're freshmen, they don't need them. I think they have to do, so it's still a year, but they didn't offer them.
I think there has to be some.
Yeah, it's, everybody's totally freaked out about it.
He doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't want to be a PE teacher. So he's like, well, let's just have. They're waiting to see out of every reading.
Right. But legislators, they want to think, and it's obesity, it's childhood obesity. That is, and granted, we can talk about all of that, but what is obesity? I've been done in their elections.
We're here for a reason.
My administrator's like, hey, prepare yourself to go. I guess that must, I didn't know this was always holding it back. Because she was all for it when I said that. Of course,
I think we talk about obesity.
Yeah.
I think we talk about obesity.
I always thought about that.
So, obesity is an indicator of diabetes. Because obesity is an indicator of our disease.
Watching kids schemes.
If you help solve this problem, there's a lot of answers.
I got professional leave out of that one. Advisor, I have to be there. So I wasn't sure she was
like, again, and again,
In Idaho specifically, or other states?
Yes, right. I love it.
Regulating that or regulating what is foods. And school, they are schools. Is our job to regulate? You were taking my right to teach my child. Oh.
Yeah.
Would you be willing to share your needs? No.
Really
You would be? We're going to lunch after this, right?
Well, as I said, yeah, you used to do that.
You're gonna get some lunch.
Oh, I know. I mean, seriously, and when I come here, it's empty. There are 2 bills right now that cannot get printed here. To add the words, my bill.
Oh, yeah.
and they had, they were playing like
Their job is to
we hired all the so we sat through 4 basketball games. And yeah, and one Judy came back, Yes. I thought she was
It is. We're leaning Democratic here. Yeah. I have shoes.
No, that's I know. It must have come along right after
Okay, everyone, we're gonna start.
Use your voice, your PE teacher. My PE teacher voice.
Yeah, no press.
Hello? I always do that if you can hear my voice clap once.
Yeah.
Pat, I can't see the other people, so I don't know if they're there. Do we know if the other
I'll change that.
We were glad to know how to do that. It looks, at least to me, it looks like we're all back, so we're going to get started. I'm going to turn the time over to our good friends over at U of I. Go ahead.
Okay, so my name is Grace Scotts-Karp, and this is Philip Scruggs, and I have to tell you, I'm just as excited as Tyler is. You know, it seems like we have very little time to have dialogue, and I think this is a great venue for us to really try to wrestle the issues and decide what we're going to do. And, you know, I've been here a long time, and so for me, this is really exciting because I went through the process of losing our PE requirements here and fought it every inch of the way, and it's so, you know, maybe we can get this back. So I'm excited to be here. So we have a bunch of slides because we had a bunch of information that we wanted to share with you. I just say what Tyler said is really important to consider. I think it's a really important piece. We're going to come at it a different angle so that we can think of other things as well and other situations and what we think might be also useful to think about. So in the first slide I've got, you can just move it, Pat, yeah. I think, you know, there are some questions to think about, you know, and Tyler brought up many of these, you know, do we know what we want to change? I mean, do we really want to change requirements? Is that what we're going to think of doing? You know, do we want to require minutes? Do we really want to change who are our professionals, going after, you know, legislature that goes to make sure that we have certified PE teachers? Do we want to go after credits? What is it that we want to really change? And I think we have to be really clear about that very soon, and then come up with a strategy. I think IAFID has a role to play in this, in shaping what's going on, because as Pat and Rhonda said, you know, they can't really be advocates for us. We have to be the advocates. We have to be out there to do this, and I think IAFID might be a good organization to do that. And you know, we approached IAFID last month about these issues, and so I think they're getting excited about doing some of this work as well. I think We have to look at the legislative calendar, and I know these are things that we have to think about, but we have to think about a time frame of how we might be going about this. And then what kind of data do we really need to take to the legislature that will make a difference? And so that we're coming at it from this angle, at least in our discussion, is what kind of data would make a difference to the legislatures to think about either changing requirements or either getting professional certification required. What data would we have to go after? And so the next slide, if I could. So what data do we need? Next one, Pat. We're proposing that we need kind of a health and well-being profile of Idaho youth. And we've been kind of systematically, in conjunction with BSU, LCSC, and ISU, have been slowly gathering data over the last few years because we think it's really important. And it is. It's starting to pay off. It allows us to have baseline data across the different regions in the state of Idaho about Idaho youth. And I don't think you can go to the legislature without finding out data about what our youth is doing. And so, you know, we were able to get some of the indicators that we think are important, and this goes back to what Tyler was saying too, is that we don't think just fitness is important. We think that we need to think about health and well-being in a very holistic way. It has to be physical activity. We ought to be looking at student physical activity perceptions. You know, we ought to be looking at the quantity and quality of PE, and we've got some of that. And why do we need that? Because we can pass that information on to both, you know, legislatures, but also to parents and to students so that they can self-monitor themselves. But it allows us a baseline data both at the university level, but at the state level and at the teacher level to say this is what Idaho, this is where we're at. And I think that's really where we're coming from, is what do we need to do in terms of gathering data. So these slides always work, don't they? So one of the things we think it is it allows us to provide information to you in terms of improving policy. So both at practitioner level and an education level, it gives information to Pat and Rhonda about where we should be going with professional development and things like that. It allows us to align ourselves in terms of standards. Are we meeting the standards? You know, we still have yet to evaluate our standards. You know, we have standards in place, but we don't know where we are in terms of meeting those standards. We have the healthy eating, active living framework that's in, you know, I don't know if you're all familiar with this. Basically, this has come out from the state, which is a really fantastic body of people, stakeholders, and these are stakeholders that I believe are really important to our push for the legislative kind of session that we might be doing, the proposal that we're doing, because this is stakeholders from transportation, this is stakeholders from parents, this is stakeholders from the medical community, this is stakeholders everywhere. Those are the people that can help support us. And I think those are the people we should also be involved with our push towards whatever we decide we want to end up doing. And of course, you know, ultimately we want high quality PE. And I think that allows us to do that. So I think data is really important, and it really allows us to do that. So what have we got already? We have the PETQ, which all the universities in the state of Idaho participated in, which I think is a great baseline data for knowing what's going on in physical education. I think we can use some of that data as we go in terms of our requirement. And then Pat and Rhonda developed 2 fact sheets, which she'll come back after us probably and share. But it allowed us to tell the legislature what exactly physical education is doing in the state of Idaho. And we didn't really have a lot of information before that. We also have BMI surveillance, you know. We did a big study with that as well, with K through 12 students. I mean, was it 6,000 students we managed to, I mean, that was a lot of students. But we've got data, and everybody tells us in Idaho that our kids are fit. I've had conversations with legislators who say that my kids are fit. And Idaho's kids are not fit. And we have the data now to say that. I mean, and that's why I think data is really important. We're involved in a pedometer study that Philip's, leading in terms of physical activity surveillance. So knowing what kind of physical activity our kids are doing in our physical education classes. That's important data too. And I think that goes back to what Tyler was talking about in terms of, you know, looking at physical activity. It is important. We need to look at it. And we also have the youth risk behavior surveillance system too, that the state does. And we have health data as well that we can use. But I think these are really data pieces that need to be in the forefront. They need to be coming out of us from IAFED, and they need to be coming towards our proposal. So I guess what we're kind of thinking about is that we think that there needs to be some other pieces of data that we need to gather before we go ahead in terms of the legislature. And we've been thinking about this in an overall plan, and that is, we think that we don't have any fitness data. And you know, we've been interviewing teachers on this other study, and I tell you, every teacher I've interviewed does fitness testing. And so there's fitness data out there. And we looked in our PETQ survey, teachers are doing fitness testing. So we can gather fitness data, and we think it's important to gather fitness data. We also think down the road, and you know, I don't know if this is a 2 or 3 year plan, we should also look at daily physical activity. And that kind of gets back to what Tyler was also saying, you know, in looking at getting our kids moving and being physically active, enjoying movement, which is the third one. We think that we also need data on looking at physical activity, enjoyment, and perceptions. And you know, for us, you know, we've been really excited to work with PE teachers in the field because everybody's getting excited about helping us get this data together. And so the more teachers we get involved in this and gathering data, the more informed they're going to be with data to be able to go to their school superintendents and say, here's what's going on. But without that kind of data, in comparison perhaps to what's going on in the whole state of Idaho, it's very hard to make a case sometimes. So I think it enables everybody, all the stakeholders, to have some information to go forward and be advocates for what we are proposing, whichever that ends up being. So I'm going to let Philip talk a little bit more about the fitness part, because I think that's what we are promoting today, is that not necessarily that the purpose of physical education should be fitness, or that we should narrow our outcome in physical education in the state of Idaho to be just fitness. That's not what we're proposing. What we are proposing, though, is that we should gather fitness data in the state of Idaho, because I think, you know, it will have important influence on the legislature.
Thank you, Grace. And as Grace indicated, I'm Philip Scruggs from University of Idaho. And just to start off with the comments that Tyler made as far as the affective piece, the enjoyment, the meaning aspect, we think that is critical. I mean, that is a fundamental piece as far as getting kids to, well, I would say maintain being physically active, because little kids, I mean, they want to be active, and or to improve that, or to change that if they're not already like that. But I think that's critical, and that's an effective and appropriate teaching piece that I think should run parallel with what we're proposing here with policy and gathering evidence. I think that's a professional development thing, and I think for us to make this the strongest it can be for our profession is to run these things parallel, whether it's gathering evidence, where we at, and we can see what changes, I mean, how are we changing, where are we going, but also at the same time seeing ourselves as far as changing professionally and making sure that can we instill that love and that enjoyment within physical activity, but also use that information to influence policy decisions, because whether we like it or not, legislators want data, want information to make policy decisions. And I think that's very critical. And to also reiterate what Grace was saying, that we don't feel it's just fitness by itself. We agree that if fitness by itself, that would be inappropriate. We do think it's more holistic as far as the child or the youth, and fitness is a critical piece, and I'll outline some of those key aspects in just a little bit. But as we're working on physical activity, what's happening within PE, what's taking place outside of school, also looking at enjoyments would be a critical factor. And those do relate to our national standards and our state standards. As far as standard 3, I mean, we are looking at physical activity as far as the valuing, enjoying aspect, not just the doing part. So those are critical aspects. And you have some of the paper, hopefully the other sites have the handout that I have also. And this is on your page 2. But a couple of things to focus on as far as the fitness stream.
So we feel that is kind of one of our next steps because we're already looking at the quantity and quality within PE. We're collecting that data. We're looking at what's happening within physical education as far as physical activity, and we're collecting other information as far as, well, the idea is to collect the next step as far as fitness data because we feel it is a key aspect. And I've outlined a couple of studies as far as looking at fitness and the importance of fitness and as far as our youth are concerned. The first one is to start off with our current CDC 2008 physical activity guidelines. And a key aspect of those guidelines is, yes, to engage youth and or children and adolescents in more physical activity, 60 plus minutes per day. But the outcome of that is trying also to improve fitness, along with decreasing anxiety, depression, and those types of things also. And so another key piece in that is vigorous physical activity. It's focusing on vigorous physical activity. And that's actually one of the guidelines is 3 or more days per week within that piece. So there is a fitness component in there that's being stressed as far as outcomes, whether it's skeletal health, muscular health, cardiovascular health. Because I mean, those are very critical things as far as youth development and being a healthy individual. And so I outlined a few studies to point out a couple key things, because sometimes this gets lost as far as maybe it's too much focused on the hereditary aspect, which that is an aspect. That is a variable that influences fitness. But also we got to remember that there is the individual also that influences the behavior, along with the environment will play a role in the task itself. I mean, we know that from teaching. I mean, so different factors influence. So there is an individual component, and at times it gets downplayed as far as the importance of physical activity, even with youth, as far as the relationship to improving fitness. Yes, there has been a long trend as far as saying that you can't do too much as far as physical fitness with kids, and maybe you got to look at how physical activity is measured. How was it measured, and was the stimulus enough to change that fitness level? And that's where the vigorous piece comes in. It's very appropriate and healthy for young kids to engage in vigorous physical activity, and it does impact fitness and their outcomes. So you can see changes in that, and but you shouldn't do that if that's your only goal. But I think a huge task that we have is what Tyler's saying is, how can we make that enjoyable and fun, and combine those things at the same time? I think that is quite possible that we can do it, and I think teachers are doing that. So that's very important. I know if you have a sheet under EB, just some factors that studies I want to point out. I mean, obesity is kind of a huge topic these days, but we know that both obese and non-obese students within a physical education program can see changes as far as health outcomes, whether it's cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance, inflammation markers. So these different aspects that are critical when we start talking about cardiovascular disease, obesity, and so forth, or stroke, even cancers. And item C under item D, there's another aspect. It's just not always physical activity. I mean, fitness actually is playing a role as far as the health of our young kids. Item D, I state that high cardiovascular fitness level among overweight and obese adolescent boys demonstrates a protection effect from insulin resistance. So I don't know if you know the researcher at the Cooper Institute as far as Stephen Blair, but it's fitness, physical activity. It's not necessarily just fatness as far as the aspect. So I think that is a key aspect to educate and to teach, that you can still, even if you are an overweight individual, you can still be physically active, as Tyler was saying, you can still also be fit. And so I think that's a key aspect to focus on. And item E, as far as cardiovascular fitness, can also be used as a diagnostic tool when we talk about metabolic syndrome, which the aspect of that, so we're talking about different factors, whether it's high blood pressure, whether it's looking at our cholesterol levels, waist circumference. I mean, just different types of measures that are indicators or risk factors for cardiovascular disease. And when you group those together as far as metabolic syndrome, it's actually kind of type 2 diabetes. I mean, it's creeping down lower into adolescence, childhood, so we're seeing more of that. So what is the influence as far as fitness, physical activity, and can those tools be used as a diagnostic tool to say, maybe this should take another look at this child may have metabolic syndrome. And a recent study that was published by Greg Welk in 2011 actually showing that cardiovascular fitness as an assessment can be inaccurate. Realize all measures are going to have error. I mean, that is true. And as an initial maybe screening or piece that could be used as far as metabolic syndrome, fitness does show promise for that. And my last point, as far as the fitness aspect to consider when we're thinking about fitness, is when we think about cardiovascular disease risk factors, and I mentioned here different ones, as we've heard before, and what this research is saying here is very current research, that these things are starting very early in life. We may see the grand manifestation of a heart attack or a stroke or what have you at that age of life, but these processes are actually beginning very early. And even with the last statement in F is what it's saying is that for those very low fitness students, that these are manifested even more. And so that's another aspect as far as why I think we need to consider fitness as far as something to focus on within our profession. And as we made, as far as a comment earlier, it's just not about those kids that are overweight or obese. I mean, it is about all the kids. I mean, all students as far as healthy, active living. Whether they're already at a fitness level, I mean, they can always, they can improve and change also.
I think the major point here is also that there's the research backing the fact that you can tie fitness to a health outcome, and I think that's what the legislature would want to be looking at, or would at least want to know what's going on in terms of that issue.
And I think they would want to know. They would ask the question, how are Idaho youth doing, as far as that's related? So I think that would be a key aspect. And the next piece, we was talking about fitness, and going along with some things mentioned earlier, I think there's an appropriate way and an inappropriate way to go about that. And so under E, item 2 on page 2, for those of you who've had the handout, there have been identified appropriate and inappropriate practices as far as fitness testing. And I think that should drive us in how we go about doing, whether it's fitness testing, whether it's assessing physical activity levels, because physical activity, just like fitness, can be used inappropriately, and has been and is being used inappropriately. So I think that, again, going along with mentioned earlier as far as the idea behind these parallel streams of professional development, focusing on policy, and also gathering evidence at the same time are very critical.
And if we do this, if we go down this path, then I think it's really important that all teachers are very, very clear about how we're using this data in terms of appropriate versus inappropriate practice, so that we're not saying the wrong things as PE educators about how we're using fitness data. So I think that has to be an important piece of it too.
I'm not going to go through each one of these points because I am sensitive to the time, and because I think it will be very valuable for us to have dialogue and to talk with each other. But you can read through those different points, and those will come up if that is the direction that we decide to go. But also, item number 3 on page 2, just to point out a few national things that are happening as far as fitness assessment. Georgia, the most recent state, as far as kind of adopting, theirs was a top-down approach, and what I love what we're trying to do here is more of a bottoms-up, where we can guide more of this policy decision-making early on, instead of having a top-down approach, which that's how it was in Georgia, which all of us, I mean, as far as thinking of educators, I mean, from the university level, there's administrators above us, and so on, that at times when decisions come down, I don't think it's as positive as if it's coming from the bottom up. So that's why I think it's awesome about this situation. But I think with put the internet address here as far as the Shape Georgia aspect, as far as adopting the fitness assessments. And they actually try to follow a lot of the key aspects of appropriate practice for fitness testing in the schools. And so I think that could be a model to look at as far as some aspects. And that is mentioned in some other states where they have identified that they do have fitness testing required in the state. They report that That, Rhonda, was
Shape of the Nation.
Shape of the Nation report 2010. That's on the NASB website. So you have some great data on what's happening in other states. So that's where I got that information from. And also from our Idaho statistics from our last physical education quality and quantity survey, just to point out a couple of things about fitness testing. 53% of those respondents indicated that fitness testing is happening in the grade levels that they reported on. And at the elementary level, around 50% are saying that they're doing, this is formal fitness testing. 50% of the junior high, it does increase, around 68%, and high school around 49% of those reporting indicate that. And this is a side note, it's not on there, but as far as fitness tests within the state, the presidential is by far the one that's typically reported as being the one used. FitnessGram is less, and that would have to be an issue. I think that's a very critical issue because they're different as far as they're different. And as far as more reference, criteria reference test, and what would be the most appropriate approach to take. And one is free, presidential is free, so that may play a real role into why and where teachers use it, which I'm not saying that's a horrible thing. But it's quite possible that the FitnessGram could be very low cost also. It depends on how you go about setting that up. You'll also notice on the sheets under F on page 3, we're putting out there this idea that we should probably have some type of pilot work. And I think that's critical for a lot of these things that we're doing as far as the databases. And the reason I say that is that I think, and I do believe this, that physical educators are key in this. And as far as the driving force. And we teach our students at university level that you are the physical activity expert in your school. You're the director in the sense of all things physical activity within your school, whether it's school wellness, whether it's safe routes to school. I mean, you're kind of the key person. And we try to expose our students as much as possible to those different things so that they get practice in that. So we do honestly believe that physical educators, because that's where we come from, and are key as far as in the schools and key players. And to do something like this, it would require all of us kind of to be on the same team and on the same boat to get that accomplished.
So what you see with that, the pilot idea here is, these are the things that I think decisions need to be made if we go down this pathway, and we have some cost estimate that we think we should be considering too. We've also approached IAFID to see if they would support some of these, and we've approached other institutions too. We'd be willing to put some money together too from the University of Idaho if we go down this stream. But I think with the last slide, it's kind of the last slide is the same, the slide that the next one is the same with what I started with. I think we have to decide here what it is we want to change. Is it P requirements? Is it professionals certification? Is it requirements of credits? And once we decide that, then we decide what's our plan of action and what data do we need to go forward. And maybe we decide as a group that we have enough data. I don't think we do. I think we have to convince the legislature that we are doing something to improve the health of the youth of Idaho. And I think play and movement's really important. And I think it's one of the ways of getting to that, but I think we have to demonstrate to our legislators that we are making a difference in terms of health. And it's a conundrum, just like Tyler said, it's like, you go one way and you lose on the other side. You lose perhaps, kids' philosophies about activity if you go too extreme or focus on fitness. But I don't think we're proposing that we should be focusing on fitness. I think we are proposing that we need fitness data, because it gives us a health outcome connection. And if we can't make that connection with the legislature, I don't think we will be able to convince them. Because we already have movement, we already have physical activity, we already have play in our physical education classes, and we are getting cut and reduced by the month. I mean, I've been interviewing teachers now with a pedometer study, and I can't tell you how many teachers I've talked to who have already said they are getting a semester cut. And I'm like saying, wow. And you know, I would say to Pat and Rhonda, that's another data piece. I would say that, you know, what were the requirements last year for physical education, and what are the requirements right now for this year? Because I'm sure they are different in terms
They
of.
haven't changed the state level requirements.
Oh, no, I'm talking about what the school districts are requiring.
Districts. We don't have that information.
And we need that information, yeah. So it's another piece, I think, so that we can say, hey, look what's happening. And I just think we need to have that piece.
And to stress this one last point, that it is, as Grace said, bigger than just fitness. We just think that is a key aspect. And it's more than just surveillance of fitness for a health outcome. I mean, there's many appropriate things that can be used within programming, curriculum, and so forth within a physical education classroom as far as using that information, whether it's developing individual plans by students, recording the parents. I mean, so there's a lot of ways that could be used effectively, that I believe. And I'll stop.
Question? Do you want to ask for questions?
Sure. Any question?
I have a question. This is Connie Dunn from Madison. Am I on?
Yep.
Okay. First of all, I really enjoyed that presentation and the research and the study that you put into your sources and resources. And my question is on, can we have an impact, or who is the IAFERD representative for us that would possibly have an impact on deciding, first of all, on a single fitness test for the state? Because I know that in our area, they're still using a lot of the presidential fitness testing, which, you know, years and years and years ago, Pan Gracie and his staff came out and said that less than 2% of all the kids in the United States are passing that presidential fitness test at the 85th percentile level, and that's really a skill-based related fitness test, where the PACER or the FitnessGram test is much more a health-related fitness test. So even if we could just get IAFERD to lobby for us on a state level that this year we'd like every single school district to do the FitnessGram PACER testing, so that at least we can be consistent and help educate these, even if we don't educate them, if we just say no more presidential fitness testing, let's move on to FitnessGram. You know, maybe they won't take the time to understand the whys of it, but that should be something that would help consolidate our data and make it a lot more down the line. And I'm just wondering if we can do that as an IAFERD group, and just make that as a requirement for this year coming up.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think, you know, I think it is an Idaho decision. I think if we could make a decision to say that we would be willing for 5 years or whatever to use one particular test and measure, you know, or even certain measures of one particular test, I think that would be doable. And I think like Philip says, we thought of some ways to make it maybe cheaper, that we could probably do that. And if we could get IAFERD to advocate for that, that would be a great thing.
And I also have a comment as far as that. I think dialogue would be very important as far as the teachers and talking about that. Because there are some similarities between the presidential and the FitnessGram. There are some differences, but there's some similarities. So I mean, as far as finding common ground on what's test, I mean, that is doable. And even within the FitnessGram, I mean, there could be options within the cardiovascular test. I mean, whether it's a PACER test or the 1 mile run or the walking test, for example. Because you can all convert to a common metric as far as a VO2 estimate. So I mean, there's things like that could be done where I think it would be easier to come to a common ground as far as a test that maybe, you know, if you don't want to do the PACER test and you would do the 1 mile, then it's still possible that you can do something like that where you can mix those tests. So having some options in there that we can still come to the same unit of measurement or a metric what you're measuring could be important and is doable.
Well, and I think that, you know, making up our own based on the FitnessGram or PACER, you know, call it the Idagram or something, you know, but, you know, we can do it. We can do it without the cost.
One thing we have to, for a second, we would have to be careful with the making up the tests, because I mean there are standards out there for, like, for example, the healthy fitness zone for FitnessGram that we wouldn't need to necessarily create the wheel or put all that labor-intensive work, what that would actually require to come up with standards when they're already out there with a very large representative sample. And plus, a key aspect of the fitnessgram, it allows you to compare to other places as far as states, and where it's a criterion reference test opposed to a norm reference test.
Yeah. It looks like Highland has a question or a comment, concern, fun joke, something.
Quickly, Tom Jewell, Highland High School, been teaching PE for 21 years. I'm full-time here at Highland PE. Couple of things. One of the things that we've implemented over the last couple of years in our district is an intra-district meeting once a month called the Professional Learning Community. Our goal is we're striving to align our common assessment, which is basically on a smaller level what we're talking about here statewide. But we're trying to align our common assessments within our district. And again, the debate continues whether it's going to be, the President's Fitness Challenge or the Fitnessgram, PACER, those sorts of things. I think that's yet to be decided, not only on a local level, but a state level. But my question to the participants in this panel at every high school is I'd just like to see, by show of hands, how many of you provide pre- and post-assessment data to your administration at the end of either the trimester or the semester or year?
Just so you guys know, we have about four people that raise their hands here.
We have how many here?
And
I guess my point is, it's on us to start. I mean, we've got to start providing data for them. Not that they would know what to do with it, but I think it's our responsibility to start providing data to our administrators. And in my case, I've been doing it for 20 years because of exactly why we're where we're at. And the last thing I would say is, I believe, first of all, thank you all, but this meeting is productive, and I think there should be a sequels to that until we make some headway here.
Terminated too.
well, and we're going to start. Yeah, we're going to start going into kind of the start of that conversation. So we've had input, we've had all of that, and now we want to go, where does IAFRT as a professional organization want to head with this kind of information? So I have comment here, question in the room, and then we'll move to that, if that's okay, unless somebody has something real deep.
Just to go along with the last point that was made. Oh, sorry. I didn't want to cut in.
Coeur d'Alene?
Oh, hi. This is Jabette Wheeler, and I just wanted to compliment Philip and Grace for proposing this. This is very similar to the data that has been collected at least over the last 3 years from the Office of Safe and Healthy Schools through their Carol M. White PEP grant. It's the requirements for fitness, activity, and attitude have all been measured through their GAPRA requirements of evaluation to maintain your PEP grants over the years that have been done across the United States. So I think I also agree that that gathering data and presenting data to not just administration but also to the legislature will have a strong effect on reducing the marginalization that has happened to physical education, not just in Idaho but across the country. Because actually by measuring and being willing to measure yourself and put yourself out there, you're also moving yourself up in line with the other core subject areas because they've been measured for a long time, performance-wise. So I just want you all to consider, though, when you do start your measurements, that you might want to take a look at the facilities that are already out there with regard to, I think there's a couple school districts in Idaho, too, that have already had PEP grants over the last couple years that can provide some additional data for you, and you might want to check into those, too, how that was collected.
Thank you. That's a good idea. I think how many PEP grants have we had in Idaho? Is it 3?
Well, 3 in the recent years.
Deb is here from CUNA. Deb, do you want to speak to the assessments that you've had to do for PEP grant?
In the CUNA district, we just finished a 3-year grant, and we're just extrapolating all the data. And we do the Fitnessgram we do the pacer, the curl-ups, the push-ups, and the sit and reach. And then at the 9th through 12th grades, we have collected height and weight so that the students can distinguish their BMI. And what we found is we don't have enough minutes in our day at the elementary grades for the fitness testing to really show improvement. But in our middle school and high school, significant improvement because we're on a block schedule, and that has been overwhelming. And then also we have a functional knowledge, we have our health-related pre-test and post-test as far as their knowledge, and then a nutrition knowledge piece that we put together, and again, a lot of significant results there. But it's been really, it has driven, our data has driven where our PE program has gone, and it's really exciting to see.
And I think that's one of the discussions we've had at the U of I in terms of being able to determine, you know, if you only have PE once a week, how's that different from 3 times a week? And, you know, if we had data, we could look at that. And we could look at, you know, what impact that has.
Good. All right, thank you guys. So now we're going to kind of move into the...
Quick question.
Okay.
Jeff Crouch.
In Madison?
Yes, thank you. Appreciate the comment from the gentleman from Madison High School. I have a couple of questions. What was the reaction of the administrators when you provided the pre and post test information to them and you showed the growth? And then that's one question. And then also, what assessment did you use to test the students? If you can answer those 2 questions, then I might have a follow-up question.
So we might have to get back to you on that one. Oh, he stepped out for a moment, so we'll have to get back to you on that one.
Okay, well, that question can go to anybody that's been sharing their assessment results with their administration, I guess.
I actually have some stats on that.
Okay, we have some stats in the room, and so is that something that, sorry, they're in the room, and so can you shoot him that?
Tell him right now?
Yeah, do you
Yes.
have it? Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, we have that answer here.
This goes back to the question, I can't remember which school, but it asked about as far as reporting the fitness information back to parents or administrators. In the last Idaho Physical Education Survey that we did in 2011, this past spring, 35% of the respondents said that they report fitness information data back to parents. 28% they said they reported it back to principals. So there is some that is taking place. That's all I have.
That's good. What's the response you're getting from? What's the feedback you're receiving from the administration on those those test results?
I don't have that information.
He's back, I think.
Okay, Highland, Mr. Who is it in Highland? What was your name, sir? Mr. Joel. Jewel. Mr. Jewel.
Yes.
Do you have an answer for how your administration has reacted to your feedback, your data?
There's been no reaction, so to speak, but just in a nutshell, what I've done is I've created, obviously used all the forms. I use the President's Fitness Challenge as my assessment. And like I said, I've been using that for a long time and providing them data. What they do with it, I don't know. They've never given me any feedback as to what they do with it. That's one of the, right now, that's the common assessment that our administration at the district level would like us to use. What I've done is created a spreadsheet, just an Excel spreadsheet from scratch, and I use that spreadsheet, and the students also have their own individual progress form that they use. But at the end of at the beginning of the try, at the end of the try, I give a complete breakout of every single student, and as a class, and as a gender, and that's what I provide for my administration. And like I said earlier, I don't know if they know what to do with it, and I don't know what they do with it because I haven't gotten a reaction.
Can I make a quick comment?
Yes. Yes.
We have had a very positive response from our administration up through our superintendents.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of firing PE teachers, we hired PE teachers last year. And in addition, the curriculum guides and maps and lesson plan templates are now being adopted for other curriculum areas, other content areas. So we are PE is leading our district in other content areas that are not to where we're at. And so it's a real empowering, a real awesome advantage for PE in our district.
That's great. That's good stuff. Right. Okay, anything else? Because we gotta move. Okay. One thing that I want to say, and granted, I'm not a physical educator, obviously. I'm just a policy wonk who deals with the legislature a lot. I wanted to say a few things before we break up into groups and we kind of have kind of a short discussion. First of all, I realize that we're not going to solve Idaho's physical education problems in 25 minutes, but I'd like to at least start the conversation. I'd like to kind of get the temperature of this group as to what they think. So we've kind of heard all of this stuff, but where we're at. So first I wanted to tell you, in my 5 years of experience, which compared to the collective knowledge in this room is nothing, but as somebody who spends a lot of time at the Capitol and with regulatory groups and state departments, etc., I just want to emphasize, and I know this sounds a little too rah-rah, but I'm sure we have some cheerleaders in the room, that this group really can make a difference, that you guys really can do this. I think that one of the biggest advantages that you guys have is that you're truly statewide. There's very few organizations in the state of Idaho that are truly statewide and have buy-in statewide. It just doesn't happen. And so that you guys have a physical educator, a member of your group in every legislative district in Idaho. That is unheard of. And so I just wanted to let you know. And second of all, the others are interested in this. Grace was talking briefly about the HEAL Idaho Network, or the Healthy Eating Active Living Group. HEAL. We're very good with our acronyms. That they're also interested in this, and that they're kind of moving into advocacy, moving into policy work as well. And so there's a lot of groups that are kind of moving in this direction. I think that IFER can really be a lead in this. One last thing before we move on is that you guys have to be in this for the long haul. We passed a smoke-free ordinance here in Boise not too long ago. Boise could be argued one of the more liberal cities in Idaho, and it took us 3 years. It took us 3 years to get that done. So I know that we think that this stuff, all you have to do is give legislators information. That's all you have to do. You just provide them with data, and data changes minds, and then that translates into votes. And it doesn't work that way. You have to be in there for the long haul. But you guys also, if we're going to do this, have to be all in. It can't just be the IFER Executive Board that's doing this, or the American Heart Association that's doing this. And that's kind of conversations that we'll leave for later. But if this group really does want to look at policy work, it's not something that we can just talk about, because so many groups go, they have their one lobby day at the State House, and they think that's done and that will change minds, but it won't. It'll take a constant drumbeat from this group. So, that being said, what I want you guys to do, and we'll break you guys up probably into 2 or 3 groups here, but what I'd like to do is everybody put yourselves on mute and think about these 2 questions. Number 1, you are governor for a day, and the legislature has given you complete and utter power. So you are the dictator of Idaho for the day, okay? What would you do in the realms of physical education? I'm sure there's a lot of other opinions, but when it comes to you and what you do on a regular basis, the health of Idaho children, what would you do? Okay? Wave your magic policy wand, and whatever you want to happen, happens, okay? And then the second, you have 1 shot to do 1 thing. What would that 1 thing be? Whether it's a regulatory change, it's a policy change, keep in mind what are the barriers that prevent me in my profession from our kids being the best in the nation? Like, what is preventing that from happening? And I have 1 shot. Okay? Remember, think like a policymaker. So what I'd like you guys to do is be put on mute. And granted, we don't have a lot of time for this. I'm going to give you guys, and we have a lot of conversation, I'm going to give you guys till 12:02 to come up with this stuff. So put yourselves on mute and go to. Here,
now, they'll hear you now.
Don't give up on us, Adrian. Keep going.
I had a teacher that would go, everybody over here, okay, everybody over here. Exactly. All right. Turn. You all ready? Okay. I have, because I want to make sure that everybody gets out on time and that everybody is heard thoroughly and can tell me the deepest, darkest thoughts that they have. I'm giving every site 1 minute only. Remember, we are not changing the world today. These are just our plans to change the world. So, I want the tippy highlights. Each rep in each of the areas are going to email a full summary to either Rhonda or Pat or both, just to make it fun. Okay, so we're going to start with Madison. Remember, you're governor for a day. You're governor for a day. What would you do? And then you have one shot to do one thing. What would you do? So Madison, go. One thing.
Okay, sorry about that. So we were still in a discussion. Sorry. Tell us is it one shot to do one thing? Is that what you're asking?
Well, either one.
Pardon? Okay, we would like to see the physical education requirement changed per minutes to 90 minutes per week for elementary.
Okay.
Statewide. And we would also like to see certified specialists.
You only have one thing. You have one thing. You have one shot.
Okay. Sorry. Our one thing is our specialists. We want our specialists. We want physical education certified specialists in
elementary school.
Awesome.
Did you guys get to the? So, but then if you were a governor for a day, or you could do whatever, then it would also be elementary school minutes.
Are the minutes, yes.
And
increasing graduation requirements.
Well, for a day, they can do whatever they want. Okay, Highland High School, you're governor for the day. What would you do?
We would just make PE required.
Make it required. Okay? You have one shot to do one thing. What would you do?
Credit.
Make it required. Required 2 credits in high school.
Okay.
Required in high school.
So in high school, you make it required?
Absolutely.
2 credit requirement.
2 credit graduation requirements. Okay. Awesome. Coeur d'Alene, what would you do?
We'd require a certified specialist in PE, grades K through 12. And the one shot thing we would do would be PE every day in the elementary school for both the academic benefit, but also to build that love for movement and exercise and the expectation of fitness.
I like it. Let's jump up to Lewiston. Broad picture. You get whatever you want. What do you want? And then you have one shot to do one thing. What would you do?
Well, the one thing that we talked about that we would do is to make it clear the number of minutes of PE for K-12 PE.
Okay.
Make the requirement-based discussions is what we had.
Uh-huh. Cool. And then what's your governor for the day?
That was our governor.
Be the most active state in the country.
Woo! Great. Declo, how about you?
Governor, they're kind of the same. They go in together, but there needs to be a mandated requirement for PE if we were governor, and that one thing would be minimum 150 minutes a week for 1 through 12.
For 1 through 12, awesome. And then McCall, what you got?
If we were governor for a day, we would require only certified teachers, and that those certified teachers would have requirements for proving that they are meeting the needs of the state requirements and proof that they're actually doing what they're supposed to be doing in their profession. And also that they get PE required for K through 12 PE, and our one thing, if we had to do one thing, we would require 225 minutes K through 12 per week, or for the block schedule 450 for a 2-week period K through 12.
Nice. I like it. Did I already talk to Coeur d'Alene?
Yes, you did.
We did. We talked to Coeur d'Alene. Okay, let's go here in Boise. How about this group?
We said that we would be happy to make sure there are certified specialists, K-12,
okay,
teaching PE, and in addition, we would want to increase the minutes and preferably once a day.
Once a day.
And then also, someone mentioned too that we would have state-of-the-art facilities in all of our schools. Like at colleges and universities, they have student recreation centers where students can go and have at their disposal a variety of different activities. We'd also want those kind of facilities in our schools.
Nice. All right. I like it. What about here? You guys are governor for a day. What would you do? What's your one-shot thing? No decision was concurred.
We had good discussion.
We have a few more days. That will be fine.
Yes. We talked about everything that everyone has been talking about. We talked about graduation requirement, we talked about certified specialists, and we talked about time. So all those three things we discussed here.
Okay. What about over here?
We said 60 minutes daily activity required, so we're thinking big.
Yeah.
And then collaboration is our one big thing, a school, coordinated school health approach.
Sure.
So that we're all on the same page and we can have professional development to have that instruction.
Mandate healthy schools.
Healthy schools. I like it. You guys have now set a record. You guys had 8 sites that shared in less than 5 minutes. I am impressed. Never had that happen before. Well, one of the reasons why I asked this question is because I really think, what is the big picture? What would you do if you had, all the power in the world? Is really your guys' 5 to 10 year goal, right? I mean, that's where you're headed as a group. To me, that's telling me those are your 3 things that really that really stand out. The one that if you had one shot to do one thing is really, to me, and I know that we don't really have some consensus around, what is the core thing? What is the one, if we put all of our success on one thing, what would it be? There's not a lot of consensus, which I think is okay, because you guys only had 20 minutes to come there. And so we are going to be having more of these, and so that we can get that. So if we had to flag our success, if Iford had put their reputation on one thing and the success of one thing, what would that be? And so I see that as your guys' 1 to 2 to 3 year goal. I mean, that's the thing that we're going to be pushing for the next legislative session. That's what we're going to be telling our legislators about. Because if you come to legislators or regulatory or even the state, I mean, any decision maker and say, okay, this is what we want, these 5 things or 7 things, they're going to look at you and go, what do you want me to do? And we'll say, we want you to vote yes on this thing. That's what we want. Right? That's what we want a decision maker to do. So in order for this group to be successful, we'll need to really hone in on that one thing. What is that thing that we want to have happen, which I think is really, which will be, there's a lot of consensus in this room already, so I don't think that it would be hard to get there. I have one comment here.
I just say, if we all agree that we want PE required, then it probably will fall that we need to have people who are certified to teach it. Mm-hmm. So in essence, maybe we are all saying that that's what we want.
Right. And I think that's the truth. And then it's a matter of honing down. Do we want to focus on elementary, on high school? Do we want to? I mean, because at least in my experience, I don't know that you're going to get both in one foul swoop. But I mean, go in with that. But what are your deal breakers? And that's a process that takes a long time to do. So let's talk a little bit about the timeline of what's coming up next, and then I'm going to talk quickly about a thing that I need from you in order to move us forward, and then we'll go.
So we know that we knew we couldn't come to consensus in 1-3 morning together. So our thought is that after Easter, following spring breaks, because everyone has different breaks, that maybe mid-April, we would do another IEN like this, probably try to use the same sites, and tell your colleagues about it, spread the word, and we will, if we have 2 sites in this building that we can actually use if we fill the room, we can do that. So mid-April, we'll try to do another one. Maybe by late May. I know May is crazy for folks in schools, but maybe another one in late May, maybe another one in mid-September after you're back in school. And the culmination of all this discussion, we're targeting maybe the IFERD conference, which is, what dates are those, Jane? October 4th. It's a one-day conference,
in
and
Boise,
we'll
right?
end here in Boise, and we'll do one plenary session just around what our conclusions are. And then, if you feel ready, then have our stakeholders and our assistants with that, maybe thinking about as early as December, taking it to the State Board of Education. We may or may not be ready at that point in time, but that's at least a target. Because then after the State Board hears it, there's a 90-day comment period before they actually vote on anything that we come to them for request. So we're really looking at this time next year before the State Board would actually even vote on something. So it's a year plan at least, and I'll let you close with your, and then I want Rhonda to share a PE message that she and Corrine were involved in as we close.
Okay, so one of the things that I need from this group is I need to know what I call the collective political capital of AFERD is. I need to know who knows who. I need to know, because in Idaho this happens a lot. I was in a meeting with somebody like, oh, I cut his hair. Crap. So while she was cutting his hair, she talked to him about our issue area. It happens all the time. The legislative arena is not that big, and so people know legislators all over the place. And also what your comfort is in talking to legislators, what your comfort level is to calling legislators, or do you know State Board of Education members, etc. So I'm going to be putting out a Survey Monkey. Whoever named that. Anyway, a survey that just kind of ask you quick questions. What I need from you guys is for you to fill that out. I know that it's one more survey, it's one more email, it's one more thing. But if I need some sort of a base knowledge to know kind of where we're going to move from here. For instance, if I don't have anybody who is comfortable calling legislators, one of our tactics is not going to be a call-in campaign. Does that make sense? It really guides kind of what our tactics are in that. So expect that very, very soon.
Okay, this message many have seen that have attended professional development and things that we've done. So I'd like to share this if you have not seen it. It is right on our website, and it's all documented, standalone. Use it however you feel necessary.
I don't know if it's going.
No volume. Serious music is not coming up.
Probably a mood.
There he is. And in Northern Idaho.
Right. I have something who's running for Chatterton.
Do you have to disconnect from the other side?
I don't want to separate. Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, you guys. It was great.
Thank you.
And please use that. It's on the front page of the Coordinated School Health
Right here.
site, right there. Use that for advocacy in your school.
Okay, we will send the sub-reimbursement forms to you all. Oh, do you have them back there? Okay. Yeah, if you need them, have your district sign them and send them back. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I took the rest of it. January 6th. Good to see you too. I'll be up on Friday. Okay. Yeah, I'll be So he'll be fine. Okay, because I gotta head out. Friday? Friday it is.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Thanks, Mike. Yep. Have fun at basketball. See you there. Yes, time of year. Yeah, it is. It's fun.
Yeah, we're just from that dance that we ran yesterday.
Hi, how are you? Good to see you. Good. Same guy you were dating after? Yeah. Well, but how we practice there's you can try. And that's what the key thing is that they want to.
So you guys are going to have your want to. And that's where Pat has been very good in her programs. You know, and it's kind of fits the dialogue. She's always about teaching the number one that aren't going to get it. They're going to get it. It's kind of super skill. Yeah. You know, but our job is to teach our sons and to bring in.
That's fine. Because we already have some. We got you this time.
Speaking of yeah. Yeah, it's just kind of interesting. Yeah. So anyway, this is our last year of grants. Well, we will. But grants at 1 year.
So that's hashtag.
You know, we'll do everything in our power.
That's right.
this
Oh, Bob. I was Scott Kretschmar. Those by the science school. Oh yeah, he's like coach about accountability.
What now? Dave Moser
We do. What I would suggest that you guys do is
when you leave school.
We're gonna go get lunch.
It's my students.
I mean, we're a research town. If it's just Idaho, right? It's just Idaho. Not necessarily. Let me talk. Let me see what they said. Because we have research. I will make a note. I love it.
Oh, yeah. We couldn't go.
Let me look at it.
I think it's important that we just got this.
What I'll do is I'll send you.
Who's going to go to lunch? Why can't we do dinner?
Evaluation I'll send.
You may find out how many all of the departments there. We could do that with the search.
Let's see what I can do. Where are you going to go? Who's going? Two of you.
I'll make sure as soon as I get, I've got the papers. Yeah, no, definitely, and I'm kind of
good thing it's done is
see, and that's
Well, it's just my class.
the requirements for hours.
Thank you for coming.
Scott's there next meeting.
You guys are waiting over the last 15 years. The last 15 years, you haven't done
What's your cell? So when we can do, I don't know what Chris had, mine are still, what is it, what do you have in our emails? Okay, yeah. I don't have a cell, but I'll keep it.
I have his cell. I just want to make sure. I got a new one. I don't know if I got a text message I sent out. It was about signature. Well, you know what? I just got in that text message because I didn't have that. Oh.
Yeah.
So that's what you were.
Thanks, Sue, for that note about me, what I did this time.
You got 301, 418, Okay.
We heard they're like all the purposes of one.
Gary's helping you.
No, I want to talk more about this. I'm just trying to figure out. It's just but I think it's really
Yeah.
More.
Well, I mean, somebody else has to do that. mentor somebody like this kid.
My April is crazy right now because we always have that day given out.
What is it? I'm mental enough. I
If we do it again, like they
I think we need to try to people know how to coach. Have you used it? Yeah. We're trying to practice. It's good. A lot of fun. Yeah.
Doing a better job.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to see you around how. Yeah. And I'm Jane. It's Lori. Yeah. Nice to see you. Appreciate the comments. Thank you.
How good a teacher Finnegan is. He's got the leadership skills, he knows the fitness, and that's how he's successful.
Even
Short cycles, I think we lower the bar for our expectations. He's probably dynamic with his kids, but we'll
and we're the only site. Everybody else. Yeah. But I'm glad that you yeah, we will. Yes.
And you know what's so cool?
It's great.
Yeah.
The lines are just red.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Just like some sort of breakdown.
Yeah.
I stayed with that while interested. Like do a policy meeting and then we have to have a schedule.
So I think that's
Thanks
great.
for the
Just
no problem. Oh my lord. Thumbs up.
Well, you're the expert. I mean, you're bringing in the knowledge base of behind the scenes things that no one knows.
Right, exactly. Well, I think this group really can be leaders on this. It's just you got it has to be all in, and they have to stretch themselves. They can ask their friends and their family. Like this is going to be a grassroots effort. It's not going to come from the wedding. It's going to really bring no, just wrong. So we have to move along, and that's it's harder, more time consuming, more expensive. It just is. But yeah.
So I hear
your meeting is
I'm not sure about them. It's really.
Oh yeah.
The political capital.
You're gonna have to go at
That's a great idea. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Boy, I tell you, my stress level on
it worked out awesome. It worked out great. Yeah.
So much Philip.
I've gone around. Phil, I'm not. I gotta head home for taxes and then go out and see the teacher.
Yeah.
Great. Good to see you.
I'll drop you off because I don't have.
Going down for the day or you go back to class? Yeah, 45 minutes.
Yeah, but usually I'm heading down by 10. Usually that's
and you want to hear
Oh, yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah, you doing it?
Well, I hope we get together at least if we don't do lunch. We can meet.
Okay.
We had the first time we were doing state standards or whatever. We were talking about this. Good luck. Awesome. It happened. And I thought about you when I
I'm glad we're very good. I think it went very well.
My mom's done.
So if you do,
Yeah, we have to make that decision. Well, I think the Survey Monkey will have to ask questions.
Not back, not
She's invited.
back there.
No.
Oh, and what do you think added it to their?
Not in the doghouse.
No, like, did you, have them fill in, because like Deb Bradford now.
Well,
you
guys will understand it mostly, you know.
And so would Monica Lyons at
Because you go to Bob Rick.
And then she said, she said, I'll share it all.
So, good on you.
Yeah, I remember in my testimony, just in case.
Kim going back or is he going somewhere else?
When I was first, with, on this, there was a lady that came up to me, she's like, and you can't come out and I heard this.
Did you have a chance for breakfast?
Yeah,
that was a long time ago.
Stop.
Does the IEM turn off with this?
I don't know. Look at Madison still. I think you turn it off on here. I think we just hang out.
She's like, I know that I'm harming my baby. I know that I'm doing it, but I cannot.
Okay, I'm gonna.
Have this baby by myself. And I was like.
Yeah, what a tough position to be in.
Well, and I told her, I said, one of the whole thing is that we didn't do this 2.5 years ago to help her. That little boy's now 2.
We did cancel calls.
And then I had another bar worker who's like, you wouldn't believe the shit that comes out of my pores. She's like, it's just gross.
I worked
It's
in a
like,
bar.
Yeah. It's like, and if it's coming out of my